everyone, and welcome to another episode of Getting Hammered. I am your host, Mary Catherine Ham. I'm here with my co-host, Vic Mattis of the Free Beacon. Oh, there's so much going on, Vic. We have Iowa in a week. Less than a week when you're hearing this. We're playing Where's Waldo with the Secretary of Defense, so we'll get into that. A Claudine Gay update from the Ivy League, and you love to hear it from Pennsylvania. Also, a Zoomer with some thoughts for us olds on the economy and cost of living. So we're going to get into that. But before that, how's it going, Vic?
Hello, Mary Catherine. It's a bit of a transition for me coming from, I was at a journalism conference.
Right.
It was very serious.
You were mentoring.
I was mentoring. I was dispensing advice and actually picking a few things up along the way from other panelists, what we were called the faculty.
You do that thing where you're like, I learned more from the students than they could ever.
Oh, no, from the other panelists. I didn't learn anything from the students. Yeah, come on.
That's what people say.
So really?
When I was a Georgetown fellow briefly in the Institute of Politics, no, a lot of the fellows will say, I learned more from them than they could ever learn from me. And I'm like, not me.
That's not
me. They're 20.
Right. That's not true at all. But I will say it was at Palm Beach.
Well, I mean,
so
there are worse gigs.
The weather was slightly different than this. The hosts are very gracious. And a couple of observations for you from Palm Beach. One, I walked all the way up to the Breakers.
Oh, nice.
Which was built in the early 1900s by Flagler, right? And he was a partner of John D. Rockefeller, Standard Oil. Built this, it was always built as a giant hotel for all the rich people, and then multiple fires, this whole thing. So we had to go. I got to check out the Breakers. We go in there. I went there with a friend of mine who was actually a fellow, but I know him, so we're friends. And so we walked over there and said, let's just get a drink at the Breakers. It was packed, right? And it's conspicuous wealth.
Oh, yes.
Palm Beach.
Yes.
It's really like, I like going to fancy places and surrounded by fancy people. This was too much. And I was like repulsed by because you could just feel it. You could feel the money in this. And the children, they all look like they're coming out of the Ralph Lauren catalog, the world of Ralph Lauren.
It's probably like 3 steps above Ralph Lauren. It's not even.
Oh, no, not even. Yeah, that would be like Gap.
Like I could get Ralph Lauren.
Right, compared with that. This is really fancy stuff. The collars up, the whole deal, the scene. But I said, let's just get a drink. We took a little table. And then a waiter came by. I'm sorry. He was with some other people. The tables are kind of reserved, so you have they're reserved, so you might need a place at the bar, but there's no place at the bar. And he says, oh, no. I got a great spot for you. Come over here. And it was like in the service corner area. And he said, you're just going to have a quick drink, right? You're just going to have a quick drink? Yeah, because we just want your, $50
That
for 2
does
drinks,
not
right?
seem like the level of service I would expect at a place like this.
No.
Come on.
Number 1. Number 2 for me. No, nobody puts baby in the corner. Just going to say that. So I looked at my friend, and he was like, you really want? I said, let's get out of here. So we went over across the way to the Flagler Steakhouse, and man, oh man, that was great.
That was bang for your buck over there.
Beautiful bar.
Now
there.
the bar that you went to in the Breakers, was it the blue one that faces
No,
the
it wasn't
waves out
open.
there?
It wasn't open yet. It was the seafood bar.
Okay.
So
I went to that one that's on the water.
Yeah.
And I did a similar thing to you, although I did get seated.
Okay. Well, of course, because it's you. It's you. It's not me. They don't know who I am, and apparently my cachet at the Palm in D.C. does not.
I also had a tiny baby with me at the time.
That helps.
The baby was like 2 months old, and so I sat him next to me, and I looked at the menu, and I fought my cheapskate vibes because I was like, there's no way to get a bite to eat and a drink for under $100, so I'm just going to drop it.
But did you get that same vibe though from the
I know what you're talking about. Yes. I was looking around like, who are these people?
Yeah.
What is their story? Because it's not my story.
I almost got hit by a Bentley. That's how crazy it is.
I was actually amazed. My expectations were so low for myself. I was amazed they even let me into that place.
Oh. Right, they have like little.
Like I was like, I can just go in and have a drink.
Screener.
Great.
No, but Cafe Baloo is very nice over there. So I checked out a lot of different places in my spare time.
Right.
And I attended all the panels, of course.
Of course.
One other thing is earworm. Hanging out at the poolside bar where we were staying is a song. So Neil Young's Harvest Moon.
Yes.
So there is like this. I don't want to call it emo, but kind of techno version of it by a band called Poolside. And my friend was saying how it's such an atrocity that they would do this to Neil Young's song. And of course, it's on a loop. And you stay long enough at the bar, it plays again and again.
Of course, you stay long enough at the bar.
A little bit. And it.
Check
it out.
Not everyone hears it a couple times.
Check it out. And if you could picture yourself at, a pool bar, I get the vibe. It's sort of just like, okay, you know how they want to keep people mellow. Check it out. Maybe I'm wrong. Mary Catherine, how are you?
I'm gonna listen to it. I kind of like a very switched up cover. I like something that goes a totally different direction.
Again, we openly hated it, and then when we got back to DCA, I texted him the link from iTunes. I said, "Don't you miss it now?"
No, it's gonna be a special memory.
That's a special memory.
Oh,
how are you?
Oh, I'm good. We had a very busy weekend because it's the boys' birthdays.
Oh my goodness,
yes.
That's right. I missed it, and you had a big
Steve and the baby are a day apart because the baby insisted on having his own birthday.
Is the baby after or before?
After.
Were you trying to? Were you trying to have the baby on the same day or no?
Well, no. But I thought I was going to have him so much earlier.
Mm-hmm.
I thought he was going to be born around Christmas.
Oh, okay. That's right. I remember
And so people kept saying, oh, what if he's born on Steve's birthday? And I was like, there is no way I'm making it to Steve's birthday. I made it one day past Steve's birthday.
Yeah.
So they're next to each other. So they have a birthday weekend. So we went to the lake.
Yes.
And as when I first met my husband, he was like, I don't love my birthday. And I was like, oh, birthdays are great. Everybody should love their birthday.
In what sense?
And then now I understand. A first week of January birthday is very tough because everyone is very tired. They're done partying.
The last thing you want to do is wrap another gift.
They don't want to travel. They don't want to do gifts. They've given you all the things they could think of to give you already. They don't want to drink or eat bad food because they're all doing their resolutions.
Dryuary. Yes. No, it's
so you have dry January friends, and you're trying to like twist arms to get people out.
Yeah,
it's rainy and cold.
Terrible.
So, although I will say, once I understood this, like one year I had to rally in the first week of January for Steve's birthday, and I was like, oh, I get it. This is tough. He got a trash can. It was a lovely trash can.
Oh, I remember a fancy one. Yeah,
fancy trash can. But we had a great time. The grandparents came. The McCormicks came.
Very nice.
So we got to hang out.
Oh,
with
down
them.
to the lake.
Mm-hmm.
Very exciting.
So we got to hang out with them. We had a great time, even though it rained incessantly. And it was
I picture
cold.
the opening of Godfather Part 2 when they had the communion party at Lake Tahoe, and there's boating going on and singing and dancing.
It was more like we were watching Disney movies inside because it was freezing. However, I attempted my first birthday cake bake. In the past, I have decorated things like cupcakes or what have you, but I've never done...
Aim small, miss small.
I've never done the full... And I can decorate I've done some impressive stuff with the decorating and the theme of a party for the big girls, but I've never done the actual cakes. So I made 3 cakes, Vic.
What?
Yeah, look,
Not
this is
one.
what happens with me, okay?
Not 2.
3 cakes, because Steve requested matching outfits and matching smash cakes for both of them. Are you familiar with the idea of a smash cake?
I'm afraid to ask.
A smash cake is for a 1-year-old for their birthday. So you could do a little photo shoot of them just like housing a cake because this is new to them and they're getting all this sugar that they've never had before.
Yeah, it's exciting.
And they're putting their faces in, they're getting all messy. Steve wanted to do the same thing.
For himself?
For his 40th
Using
birthday.
his bare hands? Uh-huh. Oh, this is a milestone.
Yes, milestone for both. So I said, okay, let me see what I can do. So I made 3 2-tier cakes. A little bitty one for the baby, a medium-sized smash cake for Steve, 2 tiers, and a large one for the rest of the party to eat, because of course you can't give them the smash cakes. And my attempt was to make camo cakes.
Oh, wow.
For the
Yes.
Baby, for the boys. So I had like 4 different kinds of
green
colors of icing.
Shades of
green, tan.
Yes.
The brown was a chocolate hazelnut. The tan was a peanut butter cream cheese frosting. The green was just cream cheese frosting with coloring in it.
I hope you took photos.
Oh yeah. And then on top, I had both boys got a little 4-wheeler or a Jeep that was riding up a hill. It's very redneck, guys.
That's wonderful.
It's very redneck. It did come out pretty well. I gotta say, a camo cake, here's the thing about that. Because you'll see all the cake makers. First of all, they make icing cakes look very easy on the internet. It's not that easy.
Yes.
Because you gotta have the right consistency of cake, blah, blah, blah. If you smooth everything out the way they do in the videos, if it's camo, you're just gonna have a muddy brown gray cake. Yeah. So I couldn't smooth that much.
Must be distinct.
So it was more of a dab and smear situation. Okay. It looked like a little rough and ready, but that's okay. That matched the theme.
And you remember there were two kinds of camouflage. There was in the 80s, 90s camouflage, which is more curves and old, and then it became more digitalized.
Mine
pixelated.
Mine was not a digital camo.
You did the old style.
Like
from Stripes.
And here's the thing I found out, by the way. You would think that green would be the most important color for making it look like camo.
Yeah.
No, it's tan. Tan was the most important color.
It different.
Yeah, you had to contrast.
I was going to say there's dark green, light green, and tan.
But what? Oh my gosh, we're going to run long before we get to the news. It's fine, guys. I got to tell you that while I was preparing this cake, I did box cake because a friend told me, you won't go wrong. It tastes just as good as a scratch cake. You're fine. Now, some might disagree. I'm sure you guys make scratch cakes that are good, but I wasn't risking it all.
No, there's a lot going on,
So I was like, let's do the box cakes.
Okay.
So I had
a Duncan Hines.
I had 3 box cakes, yellow cake. I made 2 in the morning and needed 1 more to complete my baking.
Okay.
So I used 2, baked those cakes, let them cool. Had 1 box cake sitting on the counter.
Yes.
Needed to go to the grocery store for 1 more.
Oh, no.
Took a picture of the 1 box cake on the counter. Okay? So I could know exactly what kind to get.
Yes.
I go to the grocery store. I buy another cake. I come home, and on the counter are 2 yellow box cakes. Where did this extra one come from? I don't know. I still haven't figured it out.
Okay.
And the only thing I can think of is that the counter was loaves and fishes situation.
That's your answer? I mean,
That I left, and lo and behold, the Lord gave unto me a yellow cake.
As G.K. Chesterton would say, which I can now say since I've finished reading Orthodoxy, why be doubtful about miracles? Why not believe in miracles?
So this is what
I'm
saying.
Either way.
Now you would think to yourself, Mary Catherine, there's probably just an extra one in the house and someone put it out for you, or maybe you, because your brain doesn't work properly, bought 2, put 1 on the counter, and totally forgot you put 1 on the counter. That is an outside possibility of that. However, later in the night, I was making tacos, and I looked in the spice drawer, and I thought, oh no, there's no taco seasoning. My father comes to the rescue, and he says, we're going to make a makeshift taco seasoning.
Yes.
He puts it together, but we do not have cumin, which is a major part of taco seasoning. So he's like, this isn't going to be great, but we made it. I walk over to look at his makeshift taco seasoning, and there is a plain packet, white, sitting on the counter, and it says seasoning mix. And I pick it up, and I go, is it possible this is taco seasoning? And we open it up, and it's taco seasoning. Same counter, same day.
You need to leave like a $20 bill on the counter and see if it turns into 40.
The McCormick's considered putting out extra stuff while in my absence just to see if I would freak out.
Right.
So look, I'm not going to call in the church yet. When I do, I will get in touch with you guys because I'm not a member of the church, so I don't understand how this works. But if there's a miracle happening on my counter, just a very low-level dry goods miracle situation.
I mean, that's
I'll
sometimes,
let you guys know.
I mean, there are saints who have been known to, produce beer miraculously. So, why not?
To be fair, that would be more fun than taco seasoning. But here we are.
Take the taco seasoning.
Happy birthday to the boys.
Happy birthday.
Okay, should we talk about the news?
Let's do it.
Okay, I want to play just a little clip of both Trump and Biden this week because, they're on the trail. We're less than a week from Iowa when voters could make a decision to not have these two olds fight each other for the 2024 election. I don't know if that will happen.
The candidates we deserve.
Yeah, let's first hear Trump in Iowa.
That didn't work. They had an almost $1 billion cost overrun on the magnetic elevators. Think of it, magnets. Now, all I know about magnets is this. Give me a glass of water. Let me drop it on the magnets. That's the end of the magnets. Why didn't they use John Deere? Why didn't they bring in the John Deere people? Do you like John Deere? I like John Deere.
Sure. Look, I'm not even going to try to decipher that.
So magnets don't work in water.
I don't think that's true.
Because, again, I did go to the School of Foreign Service known as Safe from Science. And I'm like, I guess it just neutralized it. I'll turn to the president for this. Yeah,
don't turn to the president for this information.
All right. Okay.
I say it's a play for the Juggalo vote. Do you remember
the Juggalos?
Insane Clown Posse?
Insane Clown Posse.
There's a very famous and viral Insane Clown Posse song where they say, F magnets, how do they work?
Well, I'll tell you really quickly on the magnets.
You got magnet stories? Okay.
I do. I have a magnet story, which is at the conference they had the name tags are now magnetized.
Those super strong ones.
Extremely strong. Like you might as well you could.
That's your workout.
That is something, and it's like isometric workout. But I had this paranoid thought on my first day that you're not supposed to, because on the back it says caution on it.
Okay.
And I thought I read somewhere on the internet that it's bad to have magnets on your near your skin for a long time. And of course, it's Palm Beach. So I'm wearing a Hawaiian shirt.
You're not protected.
No, and I can feel the magnet part. It's covered, and I'm like, oh no. Am I about to have a heart issue? But no.
It sounds like you need to be taking in much more Instagram wellness advice.
Yeah.
Because they'll tell you all about how the magnets are hurting you.
Right.
Yeah.
I was worried actually about, how it would affect my pacemaker. Oh, wait. I haven't had it yet.
Reliable. Okay.
Yeah, okay, sorry.
More reliable stuff. Let's go to Biden speaking in Pennsylvania with his January 6th speech.
One desperate act available to him. The violence of January the 6th. And since that day, more than 1,200 people have been charged for their assault on the Capitol, nearly 900 of them.
Yeah, big claps.
It started off as a slow clap. Dewey clap the imprisonment of Americans.
Well, so I do think maybe focus on
put them away.
The failures of the day and note that people have been properly punished if you believe that that's the case. I think perhaps the touting of 840 years in prison and the fact that your federal law enforcement has only been doing this for the last several years is maybe not the highlight you want to hit.
Whereas crime in general.
Right. Maybe
not
that's
so much.
Maybe that's not the point you want to make. He was also at a church in South Carolina. He did 2 major speeches this week.
That's right.
Vic, no one cared, but he did 2 major speeches.
Well, he did one in the afternoon. It was like 3 in the afternoon.
Oh no, that's when he does major speeches.
Yeah, it's a good time for him.
Yeah. This is at a church in South Carolina, and he was heckled a bit. So let's play a bit of that. He was heckled, to set this up, by pro-Palestinian, pro-Hamas demonstrators saying ceasefire now, yelling at him. And then he acknowledges that. They get drowned out by 4 more years, which I enjoyed because the chant 4 more years in a South Carolina church was like, 4 more years, 4 more years. It had a drawl, and I enjoyed that. And then he follows up with this.
And I've been quietly working with the Israeli government to get them to reduce and significantly get out of Gaza. I'm using all that I can to do that.
Yes.
So,
yes. Let's not destroy Hamas, please. We're so close. Let's
also,
just,
even if you think that's the right move, I've been quietly working.
Yeah, quiet
behind the scenes.
Don't tell the Israelis, but
I've been doing some very strategic diplomacy that I'm now announcing in my major speech
in a church. Yeah.
By the way, was this the church that was the
shooting
site of the?
Yes.
Okay, it was the site of the Dylan Roof shooting.
Yes, that is correct.
Tragic, 2015 hate crime by a white supremacist.
Right.
Imagine the audacity of deciding that your issue is the thing that you need to heckle a president, partly commemorating this event at this church with the people who endured this tragedy. And you think, you know what I should do? Go yell at people about a totally unrelated issue.
Well, and also, could you imagine if it were a Republican and it was
Ooh.
drowned out by 4 more years in that church?
It's a fair point.
Yeah.
All right, so those are our presumptive nominees, everyone.
Okay. Yep.
We'll see what happens in Iowa. We'll have more updates on that
Trump
later this
is
week.
about 50-52%, I think, in some polls.
Yeah.
Some people say, oh, it's a little concerning if he's, just at 50 now because, Nikki's at 12, I think, or something. She's now, I think, in second place. But again,
I believe there was a poll this week for the first time that Christie and Haley combined in New Hampshire did overtake the Trump number.
yes, New Hampshire is a different story.
Which
and
leads
very
me to
interesting.
think, gee, if someone really wanted to thwart Trump,
They would-
as Chris Christie says he wants to do,
Yeah.
you know what you could do?
Mm-hmm.
Drop out and
No
endorse.
names, but somebody could weigh in on the matter. and
By the
drop
way,
out.
at the end of that forceful January 6th speech
Yeah.
in Pennsylvania, President Biden backed away from the podium, wandered aimlessly, looked in all directions, at which point they sent Dr. Jill out
Yeah.
to grab him and
By
hug
the
him.
hand.
But at the end of every speech, and I'm going to steal this from a comic whose name is now escaped, Shane Gillis.
Okay.
Someone was joking about this the other day, and it's just perfect. That the president ends a speech and becomes a Roomba.
Oh, he just moves around. Right. Every little corner.
Not sure which way to go. He's going to hit some curtains and turn. He's going to hit a flagpole and turn.
We could use him here, Mary Catherine. I just spotted a cashew on the rug.
That's on me.
I don't know. I'm not sure who left that cashew there. Okay.
That's my doing. Okay. Steve will understand that feeling. Okay. Shall we move on to Secretary of Defense
Oh, man.
Lloyd Austin?
Okay.
Wow, what a story. What a story, guys. Here are the basics.
Yeah. Please.
The Secretary of Defense, who is in charge of all the armed forces. Now, of course, the president is ultimately in charge. He was presumably on duty in some sense during this time. December 22nd. A long time ago now. December 22nd. The Secretary of Defense had an elective surgery at Walter Reed Hospital. We don't know what that surgery was. Presumably it was fairly minor because no notifications were made about that he was having this procedure. Who would be in charge while he was having this procedure?
If it was minor, why wouldn't he just share it then? Until now. Okay, I have theories, but I'm going to let you finish and we'll go back, please.
So, almost no notifications are made of the initial surgery.
Mm-hmm.
Look, fine. You're about to hit your deductible. Or you hit your deductible. It's time to have your surgery at the end of the year. Let people know.
Yeah.
Even if it's minor, because you have a deputy whose job it is to take over for you when
Mm-hmm.
you're having surgeries like this. You have a White House, a boss that should know that you're going to be out of commission for a little while. And as we will find out, sometimes surgeries are unpredictable. So he has the procedure. And then he goes back to, quote, working from home over the holidays, which I didn't know the SecDef could work from home.
Yes.
Whatever. Apparently nobody was talking during the holidays because on January 1st, Austin goes into the hospital again with severe pain.
Yeah, New Year's Day.
Presumably a complication of some sort from this surgery.
Right.
Very few people know about this. He is admitted to the ICU. Quote, conscious but in a lot of pain.
Yeah.
After that, on January 2nd, his deputy, Kathleen Hicks, on vacation in Puerto Rico, at the beach,
Yes.
is informed that some of his duties will be transferred to her.
Mm-hmm.
She's not told why. It's interesting to me that she wouldn't ask why. He's in the hospital.
Yeah.
She has the duties on January 2nd. January 4th is when the White House and other senior officials, including, I think, the military, find out
Yeah, that's right.
that he is in the ICU. And then on January 5th is when Congress finds out. So from January 1st to January 5th, and by the way, Hicks didn't know he was in the hospital till the 4th or the 5th either, even though she was executing the duties allegedly from vacation.
Right.
What is happening?
They point to the person handling this would be Magsman.
That's the chief of staff to
Yes.
Austin.
But Magsman was sick, and apparently when that happens, then nobody finds out anything.
Okay,
That's
look.
the way it works there.
I too had the flu over Christmas.
Oh, we all, yes.
Okay.
I remember. Yep.
In that state,
yeah,
I drove to North Carolina with 4 children and a dog.
Yeah.
Okay.
To simply inform the White House was too much. It was too much.
Do I believe that the Chief of Staff to the Secretary of Defense could make a call and or send an email to someone about the Secretary of Defense's state? Yes, I do. Yes, I do. This sounds like nonsense from beginning to end.
So there are 2 things going on.
Is it time to conspiracy theorize now?
Yes, and I'm ready here. I have my notes. It's a matter of transparency and competency, but really the transparency thing, because I've given up on the competency thing for a while. But but
can y'all just be straightforward about how stupid you are? That would be great.
They always say, every administration, we vow to be the most transparent, and they don't even know who's in charge. That's the question. The other thing is, the first thing that came to my mind in terms of medical speculation is a hilarious scene in the gay Vito subplot in The Sopranos, right? And they're speculating what's going on with Vito, who's the underboss. And Carlos says to Tony, goes, Tone, I don't know, the weight loss? And then Paulie goes, AIDS, does he have AIDS? And Tony says, nobody has AIDS, never mention that again. So speculation is rampant. Okay, so here's
You're going to get us flagged with that one.
I know, no. I was referring to Vito in The Sopranos.
It's the Sopranos. Ha, ha,
Definitely
parody.
not the Secretary of Defense, Lloyd Austin. Okay, so it's an elective surgery, okay? It's an elective surgery. So I speculated perhaps he didn't want anyone to know because it was the kind that perhaps Jerry Nadler, Al Roker, Al Sharpton, Chris Christie might have had, and it didn't go well, and it was not a big deal, but then it became a big deal.
Yes.
Maybe. Okay. And it's a little embarrassing. But I look at him. He's 6'4", about 250 pounds. He's all man.
It's like he's carrying it well.
Yeah, he's a military guy. He carries it well. So I thought, I don't think that's it.
Okay.
And then I thought perhaps, again, though, it has to be elective. Could it be something gastroenterological? I don't know the adjective to be used here. Colonoscopic, perhaps.
Oh,
but,
yes.
We
were speculating about that before the show.
There are things, I know people, they've had issues. I'm not going to mention the words involved because it's not pleasant. You might be having breakfast listening to this show.
And it's something someone could
It's
potentially be embarrassed by.
Embarrassing, but it would not be. It would not be
but
pleasant.
Like, just tell people. You don't have to go the full Katie Couric.
That's right.
Just tell people what's happening.
And then the last thing on my mind was from the movie Waiting for Guffman, and Fred Willard. His character has a cosmetic procedure, but I'm not going to get into that here. Kind of funny. But you're right.
See, with all due respect to the doctors at Walter Reed, if I'm getting plastic surgery, it ain't at Walter Reed.
Yeah, right.
If I'm the Secretary of Defense, my TRICARE, I'm sure, can take me somewhere else.
But yeah, you remember, and these things can go bad, but I can't imagine that that's the case for him. So I imagine that whatever it is, when we find out, we're all going to be sort of like, that's it. And the fact is, they just had no process of telling people it's completely disorganized, and that's the reason. That's the only reason.
Here's the problem. Let's judge based on my own not very legendary sense of responsibility and planning. Okay? If I were having elective surgery, you guys would know about it.
Yeah.
If I were having a procedure,
of course.
You would know it was coming up. We would make some kind of plan for this podcast, although not quite on the level of the national defense of the United States of America, to have continuity in some way, if it was not like something emergent, right?
Yes.
And so how does the United States military not have this plan in place?
I'm sure they do.
Well,
not this.
I think you'll be comforted that there will be there's going to be a 30-day review of their processes for this. So
yeah, they'll look into it. Well, here's the other thing, because they said, what did the Biden administration say? And I think Jack Kirby said this. Oh, he hasn't submitted his resignation. The president has no intention to fire him, and if he were to resign, he would reject the resignation.
Great.
Because as you know, nobody ever gets fired.
Well, here's the problem.
Jobs
Here's the problem, and the great thing for Austin is that once no one's fired over Afghanistan, nobody's getting fired for anything else.
No. That's the other thing, as I said, while this is all happening, they had other, things were in place, but at the same time, I thought to myself, thank goodness nothing's going on abroad that the Secretary of Defense has to worry about.
Right. Well, that's the thing, right? We're near, both geographically and metaphorically, hot wars in several places for several reasons. We are currently getting hit by Iranian-backed Houthis with actual firepower in places. Yeah. And presumably,
without a very clear response,
these people should be talking to each other regularly, and we find out that they are not. Also, if I'm doing the math correctly, from the first to the second, maybe no one was in charge? Yeah. Because he's admitted to the ICU. Mm-hmm. They have not responded to questions about whether he was unconscious for any of that time. Right. He was conscious on the way to the hospital. They haven't responded on the other part. So just like someone needs the reins.
Yeah.
No one had the reins. No one knew that no one had the reins.
Right.
Blinken has said, I talked to him the weekend before he went in on January 1st, but I didn't know what was going on. Incompetence, irresponsibility, and third, no one cares, and no one will pay a price. He says he's taking full responsibility, right? I'll say up front, the secretary has taken responsibility in terms of the overall transparency concerns. In what way is he taking responsibility?
Well, next time I have an elected procedure, I'll let somebody know.
Great.
That's what he said.
Great. He ordered a review, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Nobody cares. Children. They're acting like children. And I say this as as sort of a goofball child myself.
Yeah.
But this is...
No, we care. Getting hammered, we're asking the hard questions.
Including all of our irresponsible theorizing.
Yeah.
You're welcome.
I'm sorry. Again, I was talking about Vito from The Sopranos. Okay.
All righty. Up next, speaking of thinking like children, Claudine Gay, president of Harvard, steps down as we were finishing taping our show.
Within hours of our having finished taping the show.
But we got to talk about it because she writes this audacious op-ed. By the way, in case you're wondering, the Secretary of Defense story has already become a Republican's pounce story.
Again, yeah.
And so I assume we can have an op-ed from him soon about the battle that he has engaged in. Claudine Gay, what just happened at Harvard is bigger than me. It actually should be bigger than I am, but what am I but a lowly podcaster? So, this is by Claudine Gay, the former president of Harvard University. I'll read just a bit of it. I might read more because it's actually pretty appalling the whole way through.
Okay.
On Tuesday, I made the wrenching but necessary decision to resign as Harvard's president. For weeks, both I and the institution to which I've devoted my professional life have been under attack. My character and intelligence have been impugned. My commitment to fighting anti-Semitism has been questioned. My inbox has been flooded with invective, including death threats. I've been called the N-word more times than I care to count. My hope is that by stepping down, I will deny demagogues the opportunity to further weaponize my presidency in their campaign to undermine the ideals animating Harvard since its founding. Excellence, openness, independence, truth. As I depart, I must offer a few words of warning. The campaign against me, seems like maybe you should say sorry first for the 50-plus instances of plagiarism.
Just do a word search for sorry.
The campaign against me was about more than one university and one leader. This was merely a single skirmish in a broader war to unravel public faith in pillars of American society. Campaigns of this kind often start with attacks on education and expertise, because these are the tools that best equip communities to see through propaganda. There's a lot of seeing through propaganda on campuses all around this country. But such campaigns don't end there. Trusted institutions of all types, from public health agencies to news organizations, she really put those in there, y'all, will continue to fall victim to coordinated attempts to undermine their legitimacy and ruin their leaders' credibility. For the opportunists driving cynicism, that'd be us, about our institutions, no single victory or toppled leader exhausts their zeal. She's going to admit to a few mistakes, but can I just say that this is exactly backwards? This is exactly backwards, and this is to the point that I think it's just, like, do you have a personality disorder? You're coming under fire because you were irresponsible. Yeah. Because you acted badly.
Can you actually address those particular charges against you? You know?
Because, by the way, same with public health, same with news organizations. The reason you lose public trust is because you behave badly. And because there are people you don't like who make those accusations doesn't make those accusations untrue. Okay. we have a to be sure. Yes, I made mistakes. In my initial response to the atrocities of October 7th, I should have stated more forcefully what all people of good conscience know. Hamas is a terrorist organization that seeks to eradicate the Jewish state. And at a congressional hearing last month, I fell into a well-laid trap of being asked very obvious questions.
Yeah, it was a very tricky question.
I neglected to clearly articulate that calls for the genocide of Jewish people are abhorrent and unacceptable, and that I would use every tool at my disposal to protect students from that kind of hate. Most recently, the attacks have focused on my scholarship. My critics found instances in my academic writings where some material duplicated other scholars' language without proper attribution. There's a word for that. You could edit that sentence. Yeah. It's plagiarism. You could just take like 9 words out of there. I believe all scholars deserve full and appropriate credit for their work. Sure.
Does the word plagiarism or plagiarize appear anywhere?
I do not believe it does. When I learned of these errors, I promptly requested corrections from the journals in which the flagged articles were published, consistent with how I have seen similar faculty cases handled at Harvard. Harvard, by the way, went after the New York Post with threats to sue them
if they were going to
over their investigation of this. So her saying that she went to correct these errors in good faith very quickly, not backed up by the administrative response to this.
Even Ruth Marcus of the Washington Post was like, she opened her column saying that she needed to step down, and she said, "I hate the people going after her." That's her to be sure. I hate the people going after her, these Republicans and these crazy conservatives. But as she opens up her column on this, she says, I think what's like one of the opening lines is, she plagiarized her acknowledgments. Okay, not just a couple lines here or there, the acknowledgments. And as you know, there were multiple counts of plagiarism. Right. And on December 31st, I believe, the Washington Free Beacon and Aaron Sabarium
props to Aaron.
Unearthed even further charges and comparisons where it's very clear that she had plagiarized. We lay it out very clearly. And so the other side doesn't bother to actually address, if you were to show them the side-by-side comparison on what was copied from the beginning of the scandal up to December 31st, they're not going to address that. They're not even going to look there because, well, it's the Free Beacon. They're not.
Well, no, she has something to say about that. Never did I imagine needing to defend decades-old and broadly respected research, but the past several weeks have laid waste to truth.
Other people's truth.
How did Aaron Sabarium's correct reporting
pointing out, look,
lay waste to truth? Those who had relentlessly campaigned to oust me since the fall often trafficked in lies and ad hominem insults, not reasoned argument. Yep. They recycled tired racial stereotypes about black talent and temperament. They pushed a false narrative of indifference and incompetence. It's not a false narrative. She seemed indifferent to the concerns of Jewish students in that hearing, and she seemed incompetent when you looked at her scholarship.
It is also amazing how the Harvard Corporation and the special undisclosed peer review investigation into whether or not she had plagiarized had concluded she had not plagiarized. Right. And they just, but the euphemisms they used on this were amazing. And in a way, I was hoping that she'd stay on so that we could try to get some sort of a Harvard kid to, try to do the same thing and see what they say. Because, of course, as even, the Harvard Crimson or other people, there were other students who said this is unacceptable because if it's a lower standard than what the students are held to,
right? That's
just not going to work. Over the weekend on Chris Wallace's show, the New York Times' Lulu Garcia Navarro, and she was battling with Jonah Goldberg and Reihan Salam, Reihan of the Manhattan Institute. And the amount of just vitriol that she had for Reihan, pointing out the very obvious things. Can we address the plagiarism? The answer is no, we can't. We need to focus on who dug up this dirt. Right. That's the bigger question. Forget about whether or not she did. It doesn't matter. Because for and they don't actually have an answer to the merit argument.
No, we should play a clip of that because it's fantastic.
This woman cannot win or lose either. If she is there,
I'm happy to talk about
let me finish.
Gay,
let me finish. If she's there it's because of DEI, that they put her there because she's black. If she loses and they kick her out, it's because she actually was never good enough to be there in the beginning, and you can't win in this situation.
Yeah,
and it is infuriating as a person of color to constantly have this cudgel put on our
I get the argument you can't win, but you also can't have it both ways. You can't celebrate and tout that someone was hired, and it's a wonderful thing to expand diversity, and Harvard went full tilt talking about how great it was to hire the first black woman, and then say all of a sudden...
The first black person. It wasn't even the first black woman. It was the first black person.
I don't care. The point is that she got caught obviously plagiarizing, and those are the facts that, there's this massive...
This was an ideological, very well-funded...
The motives of the attack don't change the fact that she plagiarized. And where I disagree with you, Kara, is when you say...
When somebody fails who's white and who's a man... Let me finish.
You mean like
when
the
someone who
president?
fails... yes. When someone... Nobody... In fact, there's books written about this. Fail and then come back. Look at Pivot. Exactly, Pivot. Nice way to get in your podcast. Pivot. And then when a person of color fails, all of a sudden it's an indictment of an entire system that the right doesn't like.
This is so ridiculous. She was a graduate of Exeter.
It's about a 6 or 7 minute discussion
that
amazing. You should watch, because what it is it pits Jonah Goldberg and Reihan Salam, who are thinking thoughts and marshaling arguments, against two women. I forget
the other one is.
Who the other one is from, but one of the New York Times, who are, elite thought leaders of the left, who do almost nothing but emote and interrupt. And I know that's a gender-coded word that I said emote, but that's what they're doing. They're just saying, like, we don't like that you're bringing this up, and it's bad, and white men bad.
And it drives them crazy that Reihan is a Bangladeshi American.
Yes.
They so wish she was white. It's just...
And like they say, they keep saying there's no way she could win. There's no way she could win. I was like, actually, she already won. She won by becoming the president of Harvard.
That's right.
With, by the way, much thinner scholarship than many other people who could have had that job. And then she lost because she performed badly at the thing that was her qualification.
Right.
Yeah, those two ladies made me feel like perhaps were they hired for their gender? Because there wasn't a lot going on there. So she ends the column, Claudine Gay does. Having now seen how quickly the truth can become a casualty amid controversy, I'd urge caution. At tense moments, every one of us must be more skeptical than ever of the loudest and most extreme voices in our culture. However well-organized or well-connected they might be, says the president of literal Harvard, the most well-connected person in the world, maybe? Too often, they are pursuing self-serving agendas that should be met with more questions and less credulity. College campuses in our country must remain places where students can learn, share, and grow together, not spaces where proxy battles and political grandstanding take root. Too late, my friend. Too late. Universities must remain independent venues where courage and reason unite to advance truth, no matter what forces set against them. This is so much projection.
Yeah. I think they realize that, the right has always been after them on DEI, but they're realizing we might be gaining some momentum. And of course, Christopher Rufo wrote about this in the Journal, and then they pounced on that by saying, see, that's been their master plan all along, is to get rid of diversity,
and there's
equity,
there's a little side battle that's very interesting where Rufo graduated from the Harvard Extension School with a graduate degree.
Yes.
And I've seen at least one tweet where he's like, I graduated from the Extension School. It's a night school for people who are not, they don't go through the normal admissions process. He even said it's less prestigious, but everyone's sort of putting on like he lied, like if he went to Harvard. And then all these Harvard folks pounced, if I can borrow a verb, pounced and started talking about all week about how insecure people like Rufo are because they try to pretend like they went to real Harvard. And I'm like, I don't think it's him that's insecure, guys. Including, by the way, instructors at the Harvard Extension School who are like, it's kind of nonsense, this school that I teach at. What are y'all doing?
Yeah. Just to own the other side, you see?
To own Chris
own the other
Rufo.
side. No, absolutely.
All right. Ugh. Well, let's take a happy turn here to I have a You Love to Hear It.
Okay. Oh yeah.
And a little bit of an uncanceled from the state of Pennsylvania.
Okay.
Where the Democrats are really showing off. Let's hear John Fetterman talking about the border.
And allies admit
there's a crisis at the border, and I don't know how anybody could pretend that there isn't.
Okay. He also told Dave Weigel, quote, as an alum of Harvard, look, I graduated 25 years ago, and of course it was always a little pinko, but now I don't recognize it. It's just...
He used the word pinko.
I'm just enjoying him so much, and I did not expect to, and I stand by the fact that he should have told people what was going on with him medically, just like Secretary of Defense.
The family should have. The wife should have. The campaign team should have.
However,
of course not.
This iteration of John Fetterman is enjoyable to me.
This is a fascinating story, and I'm going to say this before, I'm sure at some point he's going to let us down and disappoint us with his other actual liberal progressive views that have, that are not yet come to the fore, because right now the issues just happen to be ones that he disagrees with the left on, particularly on Israel and the border and what's going on at Harvard. People are comparing this, though, to like Harrison Ford in the movie Regarding Henry, where he was like the cynical lawyer, then he gets shot in the head, and then he comes out of the coma and whatever, the surgery, and all of a sudden he's a new man, and he wants to tell the truth like Jim Carrey, liar. I would also say the movie Dave with the Ivan Reitman movie, and it's Kevin Kline, and then when he takes over as the imposter president, they say it's the new President Mitchell. He's doing new and exciting things.
Also a similar plot?
Where he doesn't. Warren Beatty as a senator no longer cares. He's just going to go on the suicide mission, and it turns out that it's all working.
Well, notice that the plot of each of these is that politicians cannot be good people unless they actually become a different person or have an actual brain injury.
Well, God willing, we're going to see Lloyd Austin's going to come back and say, we've begun the bombing of Iran.
Oh my God.
Going to say.
Maybe so.
Maybe so.
Okay. Also, Governor Josh Shapiro, who is the Democratic governor of Pennsylvania, jumped on the story of the National Park Service had proposed removing a statue of William Penn from a park. And everyone rose up pretty quickly on that one, at which point the National Park Service sort of backtracked and said that was just a draft proposal of how we would redo the park. And
it was in the public comment section.
Mr. Penn will stay in place. Shapiro, being a smart Democrat, says, my team has been in contact with the Biden administration throughout the day to correct this decision. I'm pleased Welcome Park will remain the rightful home of this William Penn statue right here in the Commonwealth of Pennsylvania, Penn founded. So
that notorious genocide committed, the Quaker genocide.
You gotta cancel the Quakers
again. But these are the people that the administration has. They've infiltrated these bureaucracies with people who really believe this stuff.
Oh yeah,
that William Penn is a bad person. To make it more inclusive, because when people go into that park, like, oh my gosh, William Penn. Why did you do this to me? We're not talking about like the Duke of Alba, right? The notorious among the Protestants up north, like in Belgium and the Netherlands, they do not like the Duke of Alba. I was reminded recently because of this, of the Washington Post. Do you remember they did a whole video? What would you call it when it's like a whole journalism piece? It's an article with extensive journalism of videos,
like the graphics and all that kind of stuff.
Full deal.
They call it like an interactive or something.
What would you call it? The smelting of Robert E. Lee's statue.
Oh yeah,
remember? And it was like a whole step-by-step video of watching Robert E. Lee
melt.
Like we're watching the T-2000 or the T-1000, which are Robert Patrick and Terminator 2. And it was going to be cathartic for all the woke people. Like, yes, melt away from history. Never be mentioned again.
So again, with the projection, it does feel like in that case, the people who work at the Washington Post and the activists who are surround this, putting a lot more import on Robert E. Lee than the people they allege think he's awesome ever put on him, because you need this sort of ritualistic moment.
Right.
I don't know. I'm glad Penn was saved. And again, it matters that Democrats say these things in public. And even when inevitably Shapiro and Fetterman end up being on the other side of issues, I will say that they were wrong on those issues. But on these, they are correct.
Yeah.
They're correct. And it looks like Penn was saved as a result. Okay. Golden Globes.
Here we go.
I hear that Joe Coy the comedian who
Yes.
emceed. Not great reviews for him.
No.
Apparently, now, this could be construed as excuse making, but I heard that he only got the gig like 10 days before the event or something.
Why? Why the
'cause
scramble? Because
I think these are hard. Look, I think these are sort of thankless jobs.
we as the audience want to see the roasting of a lot of these people the way Ricky Gervais did it.
Oh, that was fun.
But the audience themselves detest it.
Yes. And here's the part I didn't like. At
But
one point,
it's not the Oscars.
At one point, Coy said, who I like, by the way, he's very funny in general.
Yeah.
At one point, he kind of threw his writers under the bus and was like, yeah, I wrote some of these and they wrote some of these. And the ones you're laughing at are the ones I wrote, which is like, okay.
Yeah.
At one point, he made a Taylor Swift joke.
Yes, and this is where...
And Taylor Swift was in the audience.
Unforgivable.
Okay. Can we hear that one?
As you know, we came on after a football doubleheader. The big difference between the Golden Globes and the NFL, on the Golden Globes, we have fewer camera shots of Taylor Swift. I swear. There's just more to go to here. Sorry about that.
Okay, so
and she did not care.
She didn't enjoy that joke. She made a face. That was a very light joke.
So light, but it turns out you can't make any jokes because the Swifties will swarm.
I mean, for sure.
Yeah.
But I think it's the better part of valor. Look.
Yeah.
She takes a lot of hits because she's extremely famous, but that's sort of
One of
the
most
deal.
Famous women around the world now.
And this one, to me, is the one that you go.
Is that the one? She could have played it up. She'd be like, "Hey, what do you mean?" or something, and that would have been great. And he's clearly nervous on that stage.
Yes.
Because it's not. I will say this. I was, first of all, very excited that we were going to have the first Filipino American to be hosting any major award show, really, Joe Coy. His stand-up routines in general, which are much more ethnically focused on Filipinos, is so spot on. And my sister told me that she and her husband, they went to see him in Atlantic City, and he's great.
He's good.
I saw, one of his bits that's still with me, which is just so amazingly accurate. He talked about different Filipino relatives and people in the community, and there's always different types. And there's always this one Filipino uncle type that can never get to the question because it's always like, duh. And I knew exactly what he was talking about because, you'd go up to, whoever it is, and they'd be like, Victor, and it just goes on forever before you get to the question. This guy's great. And then I'm like, I'm so excited. Oh my gosh, it's Joe Coy. And I'm like, I don't know him. No, I don't know him. Sorry. I'm going to talk about Jim Gaffigan, who went to Georgetown instead.
He should have just done his bit, which is various affectations and accents of various Asian communities.
That, yeah. And then the audience wouldn't know what to do. I thought Meryl Streep was trying to be
so uncomfortable, but it would be funny.
I thought Meryl Streep was trying to be as supportive as possible, but he was clearly nervous and intimidated because a lot of his delivery, he mispronounced words. And I don't mean that in an ethnic way. I mean that, because you're reading so fast that you're like trying to get it all out. Terrifying. Oh, and Emma, did you see what Emma Stone said backstage?
No.
So she went out of her way to defend Taylor Swift, in the backstage.
She doesn't need to be defended.
And she called Joe Coy 2 or 3 times an a-hole.
Wow.
Yeah. She says, what an a-hole, she says.
That's too much.
Do I have to blurb that?
That's too much.
We don't have to bleep that, do we?
And we don't have to get deeply into this because I feel like it would go bad ways with Vic here. But who was an a-hole? The New York Times ran a several thousand piece, I think 5,000 word piece, speculating that Taylor Swift is queer in some way that she has not yet admitted, and she's left these breadcrumbs for everyone. And I just think, like, of people you're going to be mad at, Joe Coy versus this insane essay in the New York Times, which never should have made it into print.
Right.
Like, let Taylor Swift be who Taylor Swift wants to be.
I don't.
She can announce whenever she wants to announce anything or not.
Yeah, that's right.
Leave it alone. Anyway, do you have anything to say about the Golden Globes winners or not winners?
I'm so glad that the Bear won, which is a series on Hulu. It's a foodie drama about trying to run this restaurant in Chicago. I think it's great. And endearing.
I hear great things about it.
And so we're mid-second season, my wife and I, and that's where we're up to. Fantastic stuff. So I was happy about that. But some of the stuff I had no idea what they were. Some of these movies that won, I have no.
To me, this
foreign
is,
stuff.
To me, this is what award shows are for. When they start awarding things, I start taking notes. Like, oh, I never watched that.
Yeah,
I never watched
and
that.
check it out. Okay.
Right. I will say, I believe a Black Lady sketch show won like editing award, and I just want to say that show should win more awards. It is so creative. It is so funny. It's already done. It did 4 seasons and now it's over. It was on HBO. Watch it if you want to. Right. Particularly if you like grew up in a more urban setting or closer to the Black community, you will find a lot of the jokes amazing. It's very, very good for anybody, but also because of that. And then did you see the clip of Jennifer Lawrence, who was, I guess, nominated for what's the dirty 80s comedy?
Oh, yeah,
No
Hard Feelings.
No Hard Feelings. She was nominated for No Hard Feelings, and the camera cuts to her as they're talking about her being nominated, and she goes, "If I don't win, I'll leave." Like, very clear.
Oh, that's great.
She's funny. Funny chick.
Her. Okay.
All right, Succession won everything. That's what you need to know.
Yeah.
And then Paul Giamatti, who won actor in a musical or comedy film for The Holdovers, which I have not watched, but I hear great things about. Yeah. He's gone viral because he went in his tux with his Golden Globe to In-N-Out and had a nice meal after.
That's very sideways of him. You know, there's a famous part in that movie where he takes the, I can't even remember if it was a Cheval Blanc or a Chateau Latour. It was a very expensive, very old wine because he lost the girl he was interested in, and he feels like he has nothing to live for anymore. And he goes to a restaurant and just puts it in a styrofoam cup and drinks it. So this is a happier situation.
Perhaps this was a tip of the cap to his. It was an Easter egg. He's a walking Easter egg.
He's a walking and the son, of course, of Bart Giamatti.
Oppenheimer, by the way, won Best Motion Picture.
Cillian
Murphy, actor in a drama. And Robert Downey Jr., who we love.
Good for him, yes.
Supporting actor.
Robert Strauss,
in a
the
motion
real hero
picture.
of Oppenheimer is Robert.
Billie Eilish won original song for What Was I Made For, which was in Barbie, and that is a fantastic song. And she wore a very silly outfit. You can look that up.
Is that the dance song, the main dance song?
No.
From okay.
No. It's a ballad.
Oh, no. I was thinking of Dua.
Yeah.
Lipa?
Dua Lipa.
Thank you.
One. Yeah, okay.
I'm hip.
The Youngs. Speaking of the Youngs,
here
let's decode the Youngs here on Getting Hammered. A Zoomer has some thoughts on the economy. This is a young woman who, you can tell from her work uniform, is in her car after a shift at Walmart. So props. She's working a job. She's doing her thing, but she has thoughts about where that money goes and how far it goes.
I cannot stand how the news has been dogging Gen Z and calling them lazy for not wanting to work a 9-to-5 for the rest of their lives. Let me put it in perspective for everybody who's a little confused here, okay? I work 5 days out of the week, 40 hours a week, okay? I do not make enough to live on my own. I would not make enough to pay rent, water, electric, and eat. All by myself. I would not be capable of doing that. 20 years ago when you were getting started, you could live on your own. 20 years ago when you first started, you were able to do everything that I am now struggling to do. Let me add another perspective here. You've been working for 20 years. You have 20 years of working experience behind your belt. You have 20 years of experience in a career that has allowed you to gain raises, to get more money, to profit you in an economy that you created. You can sit here and you can call Gen Z lazy all you want, but I've been working my tail end off just to barely make it by. And respectfully, I don't want to do that for the rest of my life. I don't want to work my tail end off, wasting all of my life working just to barely be able to pay my bills. And that is what you created, not Gen Z. We're just here getting started. You've been doing it for the last 20 years. You tell me how it got ruined. We can sit here and we can call Gen Z lazy all you want, but you let the economy turn into what it did. You let it all run to hell. And now it's Gen Z's fault because we don't want to work to fix your mistakes.
Mary, do you want me?
First of all,
go ahead, please.
She's upset.
Yeah.
A couple things. The economy is not good.
It's hard work. I get it. Yeah.
The economy is not good.
This is our to be sure part. I just curious. Okay.
Well, the economy is not good. The cost of living is high and getting higher, right? Yeah. This woman, I think, is about 20. So that means she didn't vote for Biden. So we can't lay that on her doorstep. Yeah. A lot of things contribute to the state the economy is in. I take many issues with the idea that on a 40-hour-a-week schedule right out of college or right out of high school, that you could live on your own when I got out of college or high school by yourself, paying all your bills. Almost no one I knew lived by themselves for 10 years out of college, at least 5. If you knew anyone who lived on their own, and it was very rare, that person was subsidized by their parents and you knew it. And not only did you know it, it was a bit of a, we all had that in their heads about that. That
no, it's like a mark of shame.
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
What is your experience with
So
getting
I
out
lived
of
alone. No, I'm just kidding. No, I was
actually afraid it was going to be like
the
Dr.
first,
Mattis paid for me to...
Believe it or not, for the first year, I had a roommate, not a roommate, excuse me, shared an apartment in Shirlington with my good friend Jose Gill.
Yeah.
Who he probably could have lived alone. He worked, this is in mid-90s, and he worked for Arthur Anderson before it all went to heck. And I had my parents help me because even then, because I was promised a job on the Dole campaign, and then when I got into town, the man, who I will never forget his name, not going to share it here because he's still around, sort of, never refused to ever return my call again.
Wow.
Ever, until I saw him years later, and he, I'm sure, I don't know if he ever remembered it, but I do. Yeah. I remember people. You remember when you're young, you remember the people who are good to you, and you remember the people who are not good to you. It just follows you everywhere you go. In any event, and then I was able to, once I started working at the Standard, I was able to, it was a ridiculous deal, though, because I lived at the Kennedy Warren in the largest possible efficiency, because I shoved my bed into what is not really meant for the bed area.
Right.
I just don't want people to see it when they walk in. And it was $850 a month.
Look at you.
Yeah, that's crazy. It is not the case anymore. But my big thought was, and Kate, my wife Kate, she lived in a very small apartment, initially alone, but it was not much. Like she didn't have a real bed. She could only afford a futon, and you would convert it. The couch was the bed, which is not great for her back. And then she eventually lived with her housemate, Molly Hemingway, and two other girls.
Yeah, of course.
And then for until we got married.
This is the way of your 20s.
Yeah. So like 8 years, I think.
Your late teens through at least mid-20s for almost everyone. To me, it is not realistic to expect that particularly on a 40-hour-a-week schedule, working no overtime, that you would afford to live on your own and pay all of your bills with no sharing during that time of your life. She's working her tail end off. Commendable.
Yeah.
If you're working your tail end off for 40 hours a week and living with roommates, that is what your 20s is. Arguably, a lot of people work 60 hours a week in their 20s because they are
insane
interested in advancing their careers, have a lot more time on their hands because they don't have kids, because they're in a different phase of life. Where I think Gen Z is correct, and where I think one of the advantages of the COVID regulations and all those restrictions is that flexibility in a work life is very good. Not having to be in one physical place from 9 to 5 all the time. Obviously, certain jobs require that, like the Secretary of Defense should be one of them. But I get wanting that flexibility. I think that's good for people, and it's good for families, and it's good for people's mental health. Yeah. But like, you're going to have to put in the hours in your 20s.
Yes. Well, and the other thing is this, though. Everyone is different. When you graduate from high school or from college, it's not all collectively they cannot afford this. I understand, and I believe that she cannot afford working at Walmart to have her own place, et cetera, and she works 40 hours a week, 5 days a week. But, you had classes. I had classmates out of college that were given ridiculous signing bonuses, wardrobe, and they work for investment banks, and they all live at the Breakers now. No, I mean, no. But I mean, they
had the tables you could not
get. It was sickening. And so, they're in a different position than I was starting out as a journalist. And I was in a different position than some of my high school friends. It just is different. What she doesn't realize is that she is a deficit hawk.
That's true.
She should be voting for Matt Gaetz.
So I have one more story, and then we have to wrap it up. But briefly, I must tell this story. When I first worked here in D.C., when I was about 23 or 24, and there was a young woman who worked with me in the same building that I did, who I would have lunch with occasionally. And she was subsidized by her parents and had a nice place in a nice part of town, and nice girl. And I would go out to lunch with her and another friend. I am brunette. The woman in question was blonde. The third woman was redheaded. You would have enjoyed the view. Anyway, all three of us are sitting there eating pizza one day. And the blonde woman in question is talking about how she's talking to her father about getting her hair done and getting her highlights and her cut, and that it's, every 6 weeks or 2 months or so, and that it's a large expense, several $100s. And she talked to her dad about it, her dad and her mom, and her dad said, you did inherit that expense from your mother, so I'm going to go ahead and pay for that. And so he was taking care of that for her. And I was marveling at this because I did not live that kind of life. And this is the best part. She goes, well, and he has to, because what am I going to do? Walk around with brown hair?
Yeah.
And I said, you surely could not do that. She didn't even notice, which is even better. All right.
You find these people, they're just, that's what happens when you live together. I mean, you just people from all walks of life.
You learn new things.
Different experiences. Okay. I do have a clarification. I'll save the other one for the next show. The first one here, so I'll just save it for this show since we're out of time. Countless listeners, Mary Catherine, have now confirmed that you were correct about the pudding in the Pizza Hut salad bar.
That's right.
Okay. Listener Nookie said, quote, it was almost always positioned close to the shredded cheese. This meant you were often surprised with a splinter of cheddar in the pudding.
Sweet and savory.
Again, I never did the salad bar because I opted for healthier options like the Priazzo.
Mm-hmm.
Should look that up on YouTube. That is all the time we have for this episode of Getting Hammered. Remember, you can subscribe to us on iTunes, Google Play, and YouTube. You can follow me on Twitter at Victorina Mattis.
I am at MK Hammer on Twitter, at MK Hammer Time on Instagram. You can follow the show at Getting Hammered Podcast on YouTube or Instagram. Happy New Year once again. Happy almost caucuses. We will have more for you later this week. Thanks for getting hammered responsibly. This has been a Nebulous Media Podcast.